The jury is present and accounted for.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Baylor. Please be seated. Okay, we're back on the record on case CR 22-21-1623, State of Idaho versus Chad Daybell. I'll note the prosecution's present. In addition, the defendant and defense counsel. Continuing with direct examination of Ms. Gibb, I'll remind the witness you're still under oath for your testimony. Ms. Blake, I believe you have continuing direct. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
All right, you can proceed.
Ms. Gibb, we were talking about that recording and that Chad had made some comments about how Tammy was going to die. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Do you recall approximately when Tammy actually died?
I'm not sure the date. I believe it was in October 2019.
Do you recall learning of her passing?
Yes.
When you learned of her passing, did you reach out to anyone?
Yes.
Who did you reach out to?
Lori.
Do you recall if it seemed like she already knew when you reached out to her?
Yes.
And did she already know of the passing?
It seems that she did.
Prior to Tammy passing away, had you ever talked to Lori about Tammy?
Yes.
What had Lori shared with you?
That she was supposed to continue her mission on the other side of the veil eventually, and that she would be okay with her and Chad being together.
So, and it was Tammy that was going to continue her mission?
Correct.
And Tammy was going to be okay with Chad and Lori being together?
Correct.
Do you recall if Tammy was ever designated as dark?
Yes.
Do you recall approximately when you first heard Tammy being referred to as dark?
It must have been either the end of September or sometime in October. I'm just not really sure.
Would it have been so fairly close in time to her actual death?
Correct.
And again, Chad is the person that would label people dark?
Correct.
Do you recall ever speaking with Lori about whether or not Tammy knew anything about Chad and Lori's relationship?
Yes.
What did Lori tell you in reference to that?
She said that Tammy became suspicious through other people, and she was concerned about that. And
was that fairly close in time to Tammy's death?
I'm not exactly sure when she first told me that. I can't remember when that was.
But at some point, Lori indicated to you it was her understanding Tammy was getting suspicious.
Yes.
Prior to Charles Vallow being killed, did Lori ever indicate if Charles was suspicious of an affair?
It seems that he might have been privy to it at the same time Tammy was. That feels kind of familiar. But up to that point, no. I don't know. I can't recall. I'm not sure on that one.
And I appreciate you clarifying that.
Yeah.
With these teachings of light and dark, at some point, did they evolve?
Yes.
And when they evolved, was there another term that was being used for someone that was dark?
Yes.
What was that term?
Zombie.
Did some of the other teachings evolve over time?
Yes.
Do you recall ever talking to Lori about whether or not she 100% believed everything? Yes. What did she tell you?
Once or twice she mentioned to me that if Chad's a Satan, he sure is a good one. So that gave me an indication there was some doubt there.
And Lori would tell you she received her information from Chad.
Correct.
And she would go to Chad with her questions.
Correct.
Did you ever talk to Alex Cox about whether or not he believed what was being taught?
Yes.
What did Alex indicate to you?
I asked Alex if he 100% believed that zombies were really true, and he said he 100% believed it.
And I have no further questions at this time.
All right, thank you, Ms. Blake. All right, Mr. Pryor, you can conduct cross-examination when you're ready.
I'm sorry, Judge. It would just take me a moment, please. Good afternoon, Ms. Gibb.
Good afternoon.
I'd like to go through a little bit of a timeline with you if we could.
Okay.
Right. You, and in particular, I just want to talk about Chad, Lori, Alex, your husband, David, Zuluma, yourself. So you met Chad approximately when?
The summer of 2017.
And that was at a Preparing the People encampment, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and before we go too far, Preparing the People is an organization that talks about when there's going to be a second coming and how you respond to that. Is that correct?
It had multiple levels too.
Okay, so talk to me a little bit about that. What were the levels?
Some people shared conferences about science, and some shared about the Book of Mormon and the evidence of the Native Americans. Some people shared their visions. Some people talked about ancient scripture information. Some person talked about the stars, and so those a variety of subjects.
All right, and I'm not just talking about the one that you went with Mr. Daybell. You had participated in these Preparing the People conferences previously to that. Is that right?
That was the first time I'd actually been to one when I first met him.
Okay, and then thereafter, how many of these conferences or these mountain retreats would you go to?
I think I've only been to 2 like mountain retreats, but the conferences were generally in a conference center.
Okay, and the frequency of those?
Let's see, once or twice a year. A handful of times I went. I can't recall how many.
Okay, and sometimes 3 times a year.
It could be.
And is that where you initially met your husband as well? Future husband, excuse me?
No, not at theirs.
At one previous to that?
A different one.
Yeah, and that was previous to the one that you're talking about where you met Chad, right?
Yeah.
All right, so you were at a Preparing the People conference or an encampment. You met your husband there, and then, I'm sorry, future husband, just met him, and then subsequent you met Chad at a similar encampment. Is that right?
No.
Okay, please clarify that for me.
No, I didn't meet David at a camp. I met him at a conference previous to meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't understand. Okay. So you met him at a conference. Was it similar type of conference a preparing the people conference similar to that?
It was kind of similar. It was more about the study of Isaiah.
Okay, all right. Religious-based conference.
Yes.
Okay. Now you talked about part of the instruction at these conferences were a variety of subjects. A lot of them, well, most of them based in some sort of at least religious theology or religion of some point. Is that fair?
Yes.
And most of them are geared towards the LDS faith.
Yes.
And would you say that these preparedness conferences and these meetings that you attend are consistent with your beliefs in the LDS faith?
Yes, mostly. Not all, not completely all of it, but mostly.
Okay. So when you talk about visions
Mhm.
and you talk about, I'm going back to what I think I kind of understand is that visions are like premonitions. Is that kind of what they're all about?
I wouldn't say that.
Okay. So what's the difference between a vision and a premonition?
Well, I would, from my opinion, a vision is something someone sees while they're generally sleeping, but it's a really live experience, as if it's really happening. It's something they feel like they're in that vision, as if they're part of it. It's like we are here. It's something you could actually see. You're
Okay.
part of that. Premonition, at least my understanding, premonition is just kind of a gut feeling about something.
Okay.
Like you feel like something's going to happen, but it's no visionary experience.
Okay. And there's nothing inconsistent with the LDS faith about having visions while you're sleeping about things that you believe are going to happen in the future. Is that right?
Sure, that's right.
Okay. So if, and before we go there, and I'm going to hack this up because we've spoken before. And I think the first time we ever spoke, it was your boyfriend, right?
Right,
And now it's your husband.
correct.
And how long have you folks been married?
About 3.5 years.
And you folks live together where?
We don't live together.
Have you ever lived together?
Yes,
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a time, how much of a length of time did you folks actually live together?
so after we got married, we lived together for about, I want to say 9 or 10 months.
Okay. And then now you live in different households.
Yes,
Okay. And that's just by choice, right?
yes,
So you live in Arizona
correct.
and he lives in Utah?
Yes.
Okay. And we don't need to go any further than that. That's far enough, I think. Okay. So back to this idea of visions. Like you said, it's not inconsistent with your faith that if you have a dream at night, that can be perceived as, it's not a guarantee, but it can be perceived as a vision of something to come in the future, right?
Dreams and visions are, what I've heard is they're a little different from each other.
Okay.
But yeah,
Well, what you heard, you practice this as well as part of your faith, don't you?
I don't have those experiences, but our faith believes that people can have them.
Okay, so is it something that is something that someone who has a special gift is given the opportunity to have visions? Is that what that is?
I think so.
Okay, so your husband has that gift, correct?
Yes.
And your husband has had numbers of visions, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Sustained.
But there are people that are appointed to, or not appointed, but who are have the ability to have these visions, correct?
Yes.
And you believe that Chad Daybell at one point believed he could have these visions.
Yes.
Okay. Now, you mentioned something in the beginning, and I saw that in the past interviews and other things that you've done, and we'll get to that in a minute. But you said that at a number of these podcasts and conferences, Chad has previously talked about the fact that he believed his wife Tammy was going to die early.
Yeah.
And in fact, he brought that up on the or at the conference on the 18th in 2018. He discussed that with the folks at the conference, that he relayed to them that he felt that his wife was going to pass early and had been doing that for some time, right?
I'm not sure exactly when that he shared. I just remember hearing it.
Okay, so it's possible that on
Yeah.
October of 2018, at the very time that he met Lori Vallow, the same conference, he had already relayed to the people there that he felt his wife Tammy did not have a long life, that there was a vision he had about that, right?
Before that conference, it was before he met Lori. I knew that information.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
And thank you for clarifying that because I may have looked at that differently and I viewed that in a different way. So before Chad even approached the conference with Lori, he had been making that revelation at conferences prior to that about his wife Tammy.
Yes.
Okay. And if I were to tell you that he'd been making that revelation since 2000 or 2015 or 16, would that be consistent with what you know as well?
Objection, Your Honor. Stating facts not in evidence.
Sustained.
Do you have a time frame as to when Chad started making that revelation? Any idea?
Well, since I got to know him at least in 2017, I would say between 2017 and 2018.
Okay. And that's when you first learned of it.
Yeah.
Okay. That may not have necessarily been when Chad started, expressing his vision about seeing that sort of thing, right?
Can you rephrase that? I'm sorry.
Well, that's not necessarily, you heard about it in 2017 or believe that's when you thought it was starting, but it could have been earlier than that, right?
Could have been.
Okay. Okay. And do the only two people you know who have visions, Chad Daybell and your husband,
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Overruled.
are the only two people you know who have visions, Chad Daybell in your church, the LDS faith, are the only two people you know who have visions, Chad Daybell and your husband?
No, there's others.
Okay. And it's not an unusual thing, right?
Right.
Okay. Now, I do want to go to an area that I think I've heard you discuss before. And you talked about it when the prosecuting attorney was talking to you, Miss Blake. You use the phrase, and I need you to explain this for me. You use the phrase energy work.
Yeah.
And I'm not, I don't understand that very well. So could you explain to me what energy work is?
Yes. My exposure's been that when you have a practitioner that is communicating with you or your body, they have a certain method that they use through like muscle testing, which if you want me to explain that, but anyway, muscle testing, and they ask the body questions about what's going on in your body physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. And then they find different ways to help you feel better by just their different methodologies that they would communicate. It's kind of I don't really know how to explain it very well, but
Okay. Well, we'll work through that a little bit just so we kind of maybe try to make it a little easier for everybody to understand. So methodologies, meaning prayer.
well, maybe some people prayed, sure.
Meditation.
I don't know.
Okay.
It's possible for some people. I haven't had that experience.
Okay. Something you've talked about in previous interviews with a number of different people is vibrations.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
talk a little bit about what the concept of, in terms of energy work, what are vibrations?
To my understanding is vibration would be more like a frequency of your body, just like music has a vibration and energy to it. And so it has a certain megahertz. And so that vibration can have a certain positive or a negative way of expressing itself.
Okay. So it's not something that's a divine revelation to you. It's not something that you feel as part of a spiritual thing. Is that what you're telling me?
Oh, some people describe spiritual things as vibration. So it just depends on the person.
Well, you've practiced this vibrations, have you not?
Well, I don't know that I don't know what you mean by practice it.
All right. You utilize it.
I'm not really sure what that would mean for me. Utilize vibrations. I don't know.
Well, when you make reference in a number of interviews about the concept of vibrations, are we talking about music or are we talking about something with religion?
I'm just talking about in general, vibration is an energy that people have around anything that, the world has a vibration. People have vibrations. It's just a frequency that's put off.
And is that frequency giving you any sort of religious message or any sort of revelation of any kind?
No, not for me. Maybe for others, but not for me.
So it's your position that it wasn't doing that. So these ideas and these concepts about light and dark, and we talked a great deal about light and dark. Is that something that's inconsistent with the LDS faith?
Inconsistent, yes.
Okay, so the LDS faith doesn't talk about light and dark.
No.
There's no discussion about that.
Well, I mean, I think Christianity talks about Jesus Christ being the light of the world and that darkness would be associated with Satan. So if you want to say that, yeah.
Okay. Okay. So if someone were to be practicing techniques as they relate to light and dark, or make comments about being able to tell if someone's light or dark, that's something that's inconsistent with the LDS faith.
Yes.
And that's not something you would ever do, right?
No.
You would never engage in conduct that would trying to determine whether someone's a light person or a dark person, right?
Well, I didn't have the ability to know how to do that.
Okay. And did you ever teach that? About light or dark?
I don't know if I shared it with anybody. I'm not sure.
Well, I didn't say shared. I said taught.
I don't recall.
Okay. Is it possible you taught light theory to people?
Oh, it's possible.
Is it possible you talked about dark theories to people?
It's possible.
Okay. But you don't remember.
I don't remember.
Okay. And I want to kind of lean into that a little bit about not remembering. Do you remember talking to Detective Moffett from the Arizona bound in Maricopa County some time ago when this case first started?
Yes.
Yeah. And do you remember talking to him about the fact that, you don't have the best memory in the world?
Yeah, I don't.
And the fact that you forget a lot of things.
Forget often.
Quite often, right?
I don't know. That's correct.
Well, what you told Detective Moffett was that ask anybody. I don't remember things very well. Do you recall telling him that?
It's possible I said that to him.
Would it help if I had played the recording for you?
No,
Or
not necessary.
it's not necessary, is it?
No.
Because you did tell Detective Moffett that you have a very difficult time remembering things, right?
Yeah.
And then you told him you have a difficulty getting facts and dates and times right, correct?
Yeah.
And that's not something that everyone has difficulties this, but you were particular with Detective Moffett in reminding him that you didn't always get the facts right or the dates right or the times right, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. I know that's not easy to acknowledge. Now in the conference in October when Lori and Chad first met, Chad was there to sell books, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now I understand that you've taken a jab at writing books as well, right?
A little bit.
You wrote, and I don't want to misrepresent. I know you wrote one book.
Right.
And when did you write that book?
Right about the time I finished it up, about the time I met Lori, so 2018, 2019.
And when did you start writing that book?
When?
When?
Probably, I would say sometime in the middle of the year 2018. Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
And please straighten me out if I get the title of the book wrong. I meant to bring it in and I didn't bring it in because I have a copy of it. It's called The Fire Within.
No.
Okay, tell me and I knew I was going to get it wrong. So correct me.
Feel the fire.
Feel the Fire. I'm sorry. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of reading lately, so I may get it wrong. Feel the Fire is about your religious experiences and the things that you felt going through the development of your LDS faith, right?
Yes.
And you talked about your personal experiences doing that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then I kind of noticed that there was a discussion with one of the officers and I think it was with one of the officers. You've interviewed a lot of people. You've spoken to a lot of people, right?
A few. Wouldn't say a lot, but a few.
Well, you've spoken to a lot of police officers, right?
I'd say a few.
Okay. Well, you spoke to Officer Duncan, right?
Right.
And you've communicated with the Lieutenant Ball from up
Yes.
here,
Yes.
Lieutenant Hermosillo.
Yes.
You spoke with the prosecutor, Rob Wood, a little bit, right?
Mhm.
Was that a frequent conversation with Prosecutor Wood, or was that, was there some level of regularity with that discussion with Prosecutor Wood?
It was infrequent in the beginning, but yeah, just for a short period of time.
It was infrequent for a short period of time.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, and we'll revisit that in a minute. But you also did an interview on TV with somebody.
Mhm. Yes,
Do you recall that?
I do.
Okay. Do you remember when that was?
2000, let's see, 2000, no, I'm not recalling that exactly when that was.
Okay.
It's been so long. I'm sorry.
That's okay, and I know there's always, and if you would just bear with me. But we do know who you spoke to at that point, correct?
Right, correct.
Who was that?
Nate Eaton.
Okay. Oh, that's right. I forgot about Mr. Eaton. You also spoke with Keith.
Yes.
Who was that?
He is one of the interviewers for Dateline.
Okay, and you gave a lengthy interview with him on a national audience interview. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, as part of your preparation for that interview, were there any conditions put in place that you were not going to agree to talk about?
Maybe possibly, but I just can't recall what we talked about before.
Okay. And that was Keith Morrison from Dateline.
I think that was his name.
Okay. And you didn't know him because of any church affiliation or anything like that, right?
Oh, no.
You don't know whether he's a member of your faith or not, right?
I don't know what his faith is.
Okay. And was there any discussion as part of that interview that your intent was to protect your church from exposing anything?
I don't know if that was my intention. I just shared whatever they wanted to ask questions about.
Okay. And at no time were you gearing that interview or any other testimony about having to protect your church?
I don't think that was the goal.
Okay. And that was never any discussion, right?
A little bit. We talked a little bit about it.
About protecting the church?
No, not protecting it.
Okay. So during the process of preparing for this case, you had an occasion at or around the time of the initial preliminary hearing to engage in discussions with Mr. Wood about your testimony. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay, and that was started in about May of 2020. You recall that?
It could have been. I can't recall the date.
Okay. And it ended somewhere around November of 2020, right? You don't remember?
I don't remember.
Would it help if I showed you some correspondence between you and Mr. Wood to refresh your recollection, or do you remember having a discussion with him during that time?
I remember talking to him often. I mean, you can ask me what I shared, but I don't, the dates, I don't need dates.
Okay, you do remember that there was pretty consistent email communication for a 6-month period between the two of you, right?
Email?
I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. I said email, didn't I? Text messaging.
There was some text messaging.
Some text messaging?
Yeah.
Would it surprise you to learn, and if we need to refresh your recollection, I can stop things. Judge, it'll take me a little while to get them hooked up, but would it surprise you to learn that between May 6th of 2020 and November 4th of 2020, the two of you exchanged text messages between you over 340 times?
It's possible. I really don't know.
Okay. Would it help to refresh your recollection if I showed you all 340 of those text messages?
No, I mean, I know we communicated it. And
Okay.
you got what you got.
Okay. And you acknowledge that during that time, there was a considerable amount of communication between you and Mr. Wood. Would you agree with that?
I'll say it was more often in the beginning. Yeah.
Okay. Would you dispute that there were 340 texts?
I don't know. It's
Okay.
possible. I really don't know.
And one of my concerns is that about that communication is
Objection, Your Honor. I'd move to strike the narrative that started that question.
Sustained.
at any time during that communication with Mr. Wood, did you suggest to him that you needed to protect either a person or an organization as part of whether or not you were going to testify or what you were going to testify to?
No,
You don't remember that?
no, I didn't. No, what I'm saying is no, I didn't. My intent was not to protect anything other than to share what I knew.
Okay. Okay. So if I were to show you a text message that suggests something contrary to that, would that refresh your recollection?
I don't recall it, so I could care either way.
Judge, could we take just a short moment for me to, I'm not going to be able to refresh a judge up on the screen, so I don't know how you want to do this. I can either bring her this laptop and show her the text message or however you would like me to do that.
I am okay with you giving her your laptop to review the message since it's to refresh her recollection. And if we can identify what she's looking at, I'll ask the state if there's any objection to that manner, and of course, instruct the witness not to start playing around on the laptop.
And Your Honor, if we could approach just briefly.
Okay.
And then I'll lead it back. They've seen it, just bring it. And Ms. Gibb, after you have a chance to read that, would you hand it back to the bailiff and have him return that to me, please?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Ms. Gibb, after you have a chance to read that, it's the third box down.
Right.
After you've had to read it, hand it back to the bailiff and then we'll talk about it. And if you could identify what was said and the date and time, I would appreciate that. Yeah. So in looking at that, does that refresh your recollection about discussing protecting someone in this case?
That sounds familiar.
Okay. And in this particular instance, isn't it true that when you were communicating with Mr. Wood, you mentioned to him that you and Mr. Morrison want to make sure the church is protected, right?
Well, I think in my feeling, what it meant to me is that when we talked about these things, that we would share that this was not the teachings of the church. So that's what I meant by it.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't that what you were trying to do is you were going to testify. It wasn't that you were trying to testify in a court of law or in talking with Mr. Morrison and not disclose too much about some of the secrets of the LDS faith. Is that what you're telling me?
No.
You were trying to protect some of the secrets of the LDS faith from being exposed?
No, I'm sorry. I guess it's the way you're phrasing it.
Okay. So in other words, what you're saying is that you were just wanted to be careful about what you said when you're talking to a prosecutor in a criminal case. Is that what this means?
I'm not sure how you're explaining it, that you need to be more clear with me.
Okay, I'll be really clear. You and Mr. Morrison sent a text to a prosecuting attorney, correct?
I don't know who sent that. I'm sure I'm not that text, even though I guess I didn't understand. Was I texting that to Rob? I'm not sure.
Well, Judge, I think what I'd like to do is have the bailiff come back up, take the document, have her look at it and see who it was from and who it was to. And then after you do that, we'll take a look again.
I'll permit that. So, Mr. Bailiff, if you'd please retake this paper, not yet admitted as an exhibit, but it is shown to the witness to refresh recollection. The witness may review again the text.
Okay. I just
And
missed
ma'am,
that
when you're
part.
done, just put it down because all we're allowed to do is refresh your recollection. Hand it back to the bailiff if you would, and he'll return it to me, ma'am. And I'll just try to walk through this step by step if that's okay with you. You sent Rob Wood a text at that time, correct?
Yes,
And the text was from you to Rob Wood.
correct.
And in the text, you talked about Keith, the guy from Dateline, and I, right? And is that the Keith Morrison? Is that the guy we're talking about?
Yes,
Okay. Want to make sure the church is protected. Do you recall that?
yes.
He has done a good job so far. That's why I feel comfortable talking to him. Is that what you said to the prosecutor?
I think so. Yes.
Okay. Is there any reason to dispute what I just read is not what you read just 2 minutes ago?
Yes, that's fine.
So the question I have with that is, if what you're saying is that, well, you wanted to get the story right in terms of the beliefs of the LDS faith, why are you sending that to a prosecuting attorney who's prosecuting Chad Daybell?
Are you finished?
I am finished. I'm waiting for an answer.
I felt comfortable talking to Rob to let him to know what I was doing. I just felt comfortable sharing that just to let him know what I was up to. Yeah.
So you were sharing with Rob Wood, the prosecuting attorney, that it's your intent to protect the LDS church with your testimony, right?
I guess you could say that.
Okay.
That wasn't the whole point of the interview, but
I understand that.
Yeah.
The point of this text was that, right?
I guess so.
Right. And the 340 other texts between May 6th of 2020 and November 4th of 2020, were those just to say hi?
No,
Okay. So in other words, what was happening here is that there was at least some sort of a relationship built between you and this prosecutor about how and when and where you were going to testify about things in this case. Is that right?
Objection, Your Honor, misstates the testimony.
Sustained.
The point of all this communication between you and Mr. Wood, the prosecuting attorney in this case, was to establish how you planned on testifying in this case and what you were going to say.
it wasn't the established reason why I communicated with him.
And it was just a coincidence then that you happened to mention your church and how you were going to protect your church to the prosecutor who was going to be calling you and examining you as a witness in this case. That's just a coincidence, right?
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative.
Sustained.
Judge, I'm going to need to move for admission of exhibits 6 and 7. These were previously stipulated by the parties, part of the agreement between the prosecuting attorney and myself about what we would stipulate to in terms of exhibits.
All right, there's been offered exhibits 6 and 7. I believe not. I'll confirm with the clerks. Those are not yet entered into admitted. Defense exhibits 6 and 7, not yet admitted. Is the state aware of what these are, and is there any objection once you've reviewed them, please?
Thank you, Your Honor. I was just double checking defense exhibit list. It's my understanding that this is the Lori for Style at iCloud and also the Lolly Time at iCloud, the Cellbrite of those. If that is what those are, they are stipulated to, and there's no objection.
That's what they are, Judge. And the subparts that go with it, I believe under 6, it's A through F, and then 7 is like A through D, I think, Judge.
All right, counsel, I'm gonna have a quick sidebar with you to make sure we don't duplicate numbers or clearly mark, and I'll have our clerk join in on the sidebar just as we get in on defense exhibits. All right, council, thanks for the sidebar, just clarifying our exhibits here. What is being offered, and I believe stipulated to by the state, would be Defense Exhibit 6A through AA. And on that set of exhibits, does the state stipulate those may be admitted?
Yes, Your Honor. With those clarifications, the state would agree that the Cellbrite, the iClouds themselves are already in, and these are content from those iCloud accounts.
Okay, and that will be admitted, and the court will ensure that only what is admissible through that comes in and is observed or given to the jurors for deliberation. Likewise, there is Defense Exhibit 7, and that consists of two subparts 7A and B also. Does the state agree to the admission of 7A and B?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll take the same precaution with those before they're submitted for deliberation. With that, then, Mr. Pryor, if you'd like to continue, you may.
Thank you, Judge. Oh, thank you. Now, what I want to do next is go through a little bit of a timeline, if we could, okay? You met Lori in mid to late October of 2018.
At the beginning of October.
Oh, was it the beginning of October?
Yes.
And that was, you were, and what I'm unclear about is that you were either a teacher or an instructor at a religious institution, right?
I was just invited to teach a segment of something.
Okay, and do you recall what that segment was that you were teaching?
It was about health and nutrition and preparedness ideas associated with those.
Judge, may we approach?
Yes. All right, council, we're continuing. Just now, apparently there was published to the jurors something that may have had information that was inadvertently published that was not to be given to the jurors. So with what was just published potentially on your monitors or the large screen here, I am going to instruct the jurors to disregard what they saw or anything that was read on there that may have been inadvertently published. It wasn't the intention of counsel to do that or the court to allow it. So whatever you may have read or seen on that, please disregard that and do not consider that in any way in your deliberations or consider it as any evidence in this case. We'll try to work through that issue as additional information may be submitted or published, and be cautious when publishing anything, counsel. With that in mind, Mr. Pryor, once you're ready, you can continue with your
Thank
cross-examination.
you, Judge. So, October of 2018, at some point, and you're saying, I think I said mid, but you're saying early of 2018, you met Lori Vallow.
Correct.
And from previous testimony, you discussed statements you made that you discussed that you would talk to her almost regularly.
Correct.
Now, today, you talked about the fact that you spoke with her almost regularly up until January of 2019. Is that correct?
Yeah. Like more of like a daily occurrence until, I'm not sure exactly when it started changing, but
Okay.
I would say somewhere between January and February.
And then she started what you described as moving around a little bit.
Correct.
Okay. And when she was moving around, let's talk a little bit about that. When she was with you, she was in Arizona.
When she was with me, when I met her,
When you first met her in October, that was somewhere
Correct.
in Arizona, right?
right?
And she was there, you folks were there at the same vicinity up until the first part of January. Is that fair?
I believe so.
Okay. And then did she move somewhere around the 1st of January?
So I remember she had the first house. It was either Chandler or Gilbert. I get confused.
Okay.
They're right beside each other. And then she moved to another house, maybe within less than half an hour away from there.
Okay. And during that time, you weren't seeing each other every day then at that point, correct?
When she moved to the second house?
Yes.
I don't know. We saw each other often. I don't know how at that point. I don't remember.
Okay. You don't remember. Okay. And then at that point, after that second house, then where did she go?
She went to Hawaii.
And that was around February 1st, right?
It was in February. I don't recall when she actually flew out there.
So if I were to represent to you that around February 1st to the end of March, Lori Vallow was living in Hawaii, is that something that you would have any reason to disagree with?
It could be true.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And then when she's living in Hawaii from February 1st of 2019 till the end of March, how often did you see each other in person?
Oh, just once.
Okay. Saw each other once. Tylee was out there at one point as well, right?
Prior to me coming, yes.
Okay. And please excuse me, but your relationship with Tylee would be described as not the best. Would that be fair?
I would just say no relationship.
Okay. And that's what you've previously said. There just wasn't any relationship, right?
That's right.
You folks didn't particularly care to be around each other.
That's not true. It just didn't.
Okay. Just no relationship.
Right.
So when you testify that you met her a couple of times, I think is what you said earlier today. Is that right?
A few times I've been around her.
Okay. It wasn't of anything of any substance, correct?
Correct.
So anything she would have said or not said to you, it wasn't anything of any significance, correct?
She wasn't talking to me.
Okay. Okay. That's no relationship. I agree with-
Objection, Your Honor. Strike the narrative.
Sustained.
Well, during that February 1st to the end of March, how often would you talk to Lori on the phone?
I am not sure.
Okay. You don't remember.
I don't remember.
You would have remembered if it was every single day, right?
It's been too long for me to recall that.
Okay. Okay. And would you agree with me that your memory would have been better closer to the incident than it would be this much time later, right?
I believe so.
And you would agree with me that if you were to give any kind of a statement close in time to when these events took place, they would have been more accurate than statements that maybe you're making today.
Maybe a little bit more.
Okay. Well, you acknowledged to me that you have difficulty getting facts straight and information straight.
Objection, Your Honor. Misstates the testimony and it's a narrative. Move to
Sustained.
strike.
Sustain and strike that.
Okay. You testified earlier that you sometimes don't remember things correctly.
That's right.
Okay. Is it possible today that you're suffering from that today as part of your testimony?
I think it's a general forgetting because when you go have a relationship with somebody, you don't remember every detail of it. I think it's a normal forgetting.
But you were pretty detailed in your testimony today, specific about a lot of things.
Objection, Your Honor. Move to strike. There's no question.
There is a question
Well
coming.
sustained. It wasn't a question, Mr. Pryor. It's just a statement. It's
Isn't it-
argumentative. Go ahead with a question, please.
So what you're telling me is that your testimony today is based on, to the best of your recollection, what you remember happened back several years ago, right?
Yes,
And that today you're not influenced by your difficulty remembering things sometimes today, right? Just for today.
well, the same,
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative.
Sustained. Ask another question, please, Mr. Pryor.
You're not suffering through your testimony today of the issue we talked about you being somewhat forgetful, right?
it's a hard way to answer that question because of the things that we're talking about today, I've shared so often that those are the things that I remember.
Okay. Okay. And we're going to get to that a little bit about some of the things. Now, after the end of March, then where did Lori go?
I know she at one point was with Alex, and I can't recall exactly when that was, but it was prior to her going to Texas.
Was with Alex somewhere.
Yeah, she went to Alex's house,
Where did Alex live?
in his house.
What town?
It's either Queen Creek or Santan, Arizona.
That's in Arizona. And then at some point she went to Texas. Is that what you were saying?
I just remembered she went to another, let's see. She had another house she went to. I'm just trying to remember where that fit in.
Okay. But in any event, she was moving around quite a bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if I go back to February through March, February 1st through the end of March, when Lori was in Hawaii and she was in a place called Kauai,
Correct.
one of those islands over there.
Correct.
Okay. And she was with Tylee for at least a portion of that, right?
I believe Tylee, and I think she had a friend with her too. Tylee's friend and her.
Okay.
That's my memory.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But JJ was with the father, Charles, correct?
I would assume.
Okay. You don't know.
I haven't thought about it.
Okay. So you don't know where JJ was at this point.
I probably knew that then.
Okay.
Yeah.
You knew that then? You just don't recall now, right?
Haven't thought about it. I don't recall.
Okay. Okay. So for a 2-month period, Lori didn't have JJ with her when she was in Hawaii. JJ, at least we think, was with Charles for that 2-month period.
I would say so.
Okay. Okay. And were you aware that there were divorce proceedings filed by Charles at some point?
I was aware of that.
Okay. Were you also aware that subsequent to those divorce proceedings, there was a reconciliation between Charles and Lori?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. And at that point, they were contemplating getting back together and trying to work on their relationship, right?
I could be. I can't remember exactly the words, but I would say it's possible.
Okay. Well, I guess if you're talking to your friend every day and this great communication is going on, I would think that a discussion about reconciliation would have been discussed during all those daily conversations. It wasn't?
Objection, Your Honor. Narrative. Move to strike.
Sustained.
Was there a discussion about reconciliation between you and Lori after the March visit to Hawaii by Lori?
It's possible.
Okay, you don't remember though, right?
It's just been too long. I haven't sat and thought about that for a while.
And then at some point subsequent to their reconciliation, do you have any idea where Lori moved to? And I would talk about in June, July, August of 2018.
So the house in, it was either Gilbert or Chandler, Arizona. She moved into another house.
And at that point, were you still maintaining that daily phone discussion with Lori?
I don't know how often we spoke.
You don't remember?
I don't remember.
Okay. So you wouldn't be able to say that you spoke to her every day. You don't actually remember how often.
I don't remember.
Okay. And then at some point there was an issue with Charles and Lori and Alex in at that Arizona home. You recall that?
Yes.
And that was a situation where you had previously testified that there was an altercation with a bat, and Tylee was there. And at some point, Alex went into the bedroom to retrieve his gun because he was feeling threatened.
Correct.
And at that point, it came back and there was a shooting.
Yes, that's what I heard.
And to your recollection, on the premises at that point, Lori Vallow was there at that point?
I'm not sure exactly where she was at that point. She just shared what she shared. I know at some point she took JJ to school,
Right.
but I don't know in between all of that
Okay.
when she left and when she stayed.
Okay, but initially, Lori was there.
Right.
Initially, Tylee was there.
Right.
Initially, JJ was there.
Right.
And initially, Alex was there.
Yes.
And initially, Charles was there.
Correct.
And then after the shooting, or at least at some point, Lori left and took JJ and Tylee somewhere else. Is that what you recall?
I remember something to that nature. I don't know exactly when they left and stayed. I don't remember all that.
Okay. Okay. Now, did you have information about, and just tell me yes or no, did you have information about Lori's financial situation?
Only what she shared with me.
Did she share with you about the life insurance she got as a result of Joseph Ryan's death?
Oh, yes, she did.
Okay, that was a significant amount of money.
I think it was $2,000 a month for Tylee.
Well, I'm talking
Did you
about
get
the life insurance.
Oh, seemed like it was about $20,000 if I remember.
Is it possible you're confusing what Alex took to Idaho and what Lori got?
I have no idea what he took to Idaho or if he even did that. That's not my knowledge.
And you didn't have regular communication with Alex Cox. Is that what you're telling me?
Right.
Okay. And when I say you didn't have regular communication from October of 2018 until January of 2020, how often would you say you've actually spoke with Alex Cox?
Oh, I couldn't recall.
And Judge, I'm looking at 215. I'm inquiring of the court as to whether or not you want to take a short. I've got a bit to go, Judge.
I understand. Let me have a quick sidebar with counsel. All right, thank you, counsel. We are going to go ahead and take a mid-afternoon break here. We'll try to keep this break if we could to about 20 minutes, but I understand it takes time for movement of the jurors, et cetera. we'll come back on then, and we're going to try to wrap up with evidence today at 3:15 instead of 3:30. So with that in mind, if we can try to abbreviate the break, we'll do that now.
All right. All right, folks, we'll see you in 20 minutes. Really 15 by the time we